Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our Icinga installation guide. Today we are going to have a look at Icinga Director. The director is going to help you configure Icinga objects via the web interface. As a side note, you have two different ways of configuring Icinga objects. One is via the DSL, the domain-specific language for Icinga, and the other way is the Icinga Director. It is not recommended to do both things at the same time. So when it comes to compatibility, anything that you configure in the director is visible in the configuration files, but if you add anything to the configuration files manually, it won't necessarily be visible in the director. So we recommend only doing either or. And we are going to have a look at how to do it the director way now. So in order to set up the director, we're going to switch over to the Icinga web, click on the Icinga Director tab on the left, and then we are going to select our database. So here in the drop-down we can only see two databases that we used for the Icinga web, but we also created a third one that we need to activate first. In order to activate the database, we need to go to the settings, which is the gear icon in the bottom left next to username, and then click Application. And in here, we need to click on the tab Resources. Here we can see the two databases that we set up for the web, and then we need to click on Add a new resource to add in our Icinga Director database. We are just going to call it Director, and the database name is also Director. And the password is going to be change me again. For the character set, we are going to choose UTF-8. And then we can validate and see if everything works. That looks good. We can save our changes and the database appears in the list. Let's switch back to the Icinga Director tab and choose the newly added resource as our database. In the next step, we need to create a schema. We can click the button and then we need to wait a few moments. Now that this was successful, we need to connect our director with the Icinga DB daemon for the backend. The endpoint name is going to be the name of the machine. In our case, that would be Quick Start Guide Demo. For the host, I'm just going to enter the IP address, which is the 127.0.0.1. We can leave the port as it is. And the API user is going to be root with a password that we can look up real quick. And on the CLI, we are going to have a look at etc icinga2 confd API users.conf. And in here, we see the API user root with the password that we can just copy and paste. It seems like it worked well. Let's have a look at the activity log here. In the activity log, you can see all of the changes that we've made. They are stored here temporarily, and they will only go into action after we deploy them. So let's deploy all of the 256 pending changes. We've got a green check mark, so this looks like it worked. We can have a look at the hosts and the services. And it looks like nothing new was added and everything is still working. Okay, this is entirely as we expected. Like I said earlier, all of the things that are configured in the config files will not show up in the director. So all of the default objects are still there. But if we look at the Icinga Director hosts, we will not see any configuration objects there. So this is going to be our next goal, to set up our own first host in the director. And since we don't have a lot of options, we are just going to configure the Icinga master in the director. Now let's jump right into it and add our first host to the Icinga director. In order to do that, we want to first add a host template. If you try to click on hosts as it is, the director will also let you know that you need a host template first and link you to the correct section. We're going to call the template standard template, and for the check command we want to use hosts alive, as this will tell us whether a host is reachable or not. And I'll type in host alive and select it from the drop down. This is basically just a ping that checks for us if the host is still there and running. And under check execution, I'll just set some defaults, 300 seconds for the check interval, 60 seconds for the retry interval, and 3 max check attempts, which will be used for all of the hosts that inherit from the standard template. I'll also add a yes to execute active checks, a no to the accepting of passive checks, and yes, it's supposed to send some notifications out. And let's store the template as it is. Now if we switch over to the template section, we can see our standard template, which is not in use yet. Now we want to add our host, so we go to hosts and add. Here we can choose our template, so we'll take the standard template that we just configured. And once we select it, all of the other options pop up. For the host name, we are again adding the IP of our local host. The display name can be whatever we want it to be. I'll just choose Director Master. This is where we want to add the IP address. So I'll just put the IP down here and go back to the host name up there and add Director Master, because this is how it's going to be displayed in the web interface. Apart from that, we don't need to add anything. You can have a look at the additional properties and the other settings, but we don't need any of that, so we're just going to store this host for now. Now that we added it, we can see it appear on the left side here. And if we go back to the overview and hosts, still nothing has changed, and we still only have our default objects in here. And why is that? Because it is still stuck in the activity log and we haven't deployed our changes yet. So here in the activity log, we can see the 2 changes that we made, one for the template and one for the host itself. Now when we deploy it, it switches to a green check mark again. And when we navigate back to our hosts, we can see a new one has appeared. Our Director Master is here. So for now it's still blue, pending, as we just added it. It doesn't have its first result yet. But when we click on the details, we can trigger the first check manually. And there we go. It's all green and up. And now we have our first host configured via the director. When we navigate to services, we still only have our default services that were created in the beginning. And this is what we are going to tackle next. So we'll click again on the director and on services this time. And again, we want to add a service template first before we add any services by themselves. So our template is going to be standard service. For the check command, we are going for ping 4, so a ping on the IPv4 address. And for check execution, we'll just add in the same values as we did for the host template. And once we save it, we can see the activity log has another change popping up. And now we will add some more templates. The first one for MySQL. In this MySQL template, we are going to import our standard template that we just created before. This makes it so that all of the values that we specified in the standard template will be used here as well. So if we flip open the check execution part, we can see all of the information has been pre-filled already. Now the only thing that is left to do is change the check command that we want to use from ping to a MySQL specific one, and now we can finish the template. We can also run the MySQL check on the terminal real quick to see what it looks like. For that, we are going to navigate to user lib nagios plugins and check MySQL. And once we run the command, we can see the return value of this plugin. We can also have a look at the arguments here. If we run it with -h localhost, we can see it's still working. But if we run it with the IP address, we get an access denied. So we have some user permission problems. So in order to get it to work on the machine, we are also going to have to grant the correct privileges to the user. So we're going to log into MySQL. We run a create user command for the test user that we are going to use. We are going to grant privileges to the test user. And in order to get it running, we are going to use the command again and also specify the user that we just created and the password. And here we have the correct output again. So in order to use the check successfully, we are going to have to add those parameters also to our template that we just created. So we're going to hop back into the web interface and to the MySQL template, and there we want to add a field. When we click on the field, there's a drop down and we want to select the host name, and this field is also mandatory. So we'll add the field, and the next one is the user, which is also mandatory. And lastly, the password. So now we have added all of the 3 parameters that we are going to need for this check into our service template. And we can navigate back to our service section and create our first service. We will call this MySQL, and we are going to import the correct template. Now we need to choose the host that it's supposed to run on. We can either select a template, so all of the hosts that have this template will automatically get the service, or we can choose a host directly. Host name is going to be localhost again. The password that we set in the database is secure password, and the username should be our test user. Now we can add the service. Now in order for it to appear, we need to deploy it. We don't actually have to go to the activity log every time. We can also deploy it from here. Green tick mark appeared again. And once we hop back to the services, we can see our MySQL now appeared on the director master. So this is the first service that we configured exclusively via the director. And with another check now, we can also force the first check result to come in early. And it's green. And this is how easy it is to create hosts and services with the director. So now we have the issue that we have both configuration via the director, but also the objects that have been configured via DSL, so via config files from the get-go, and that we need to remove the config files. So we have all of the configuration in one place, that being the Icinga Director. For getting rid of the default objects, we are going to switch back over to the CLI, and we're going to move to the etc icinga2 confd directory and open the hosts.conf. And here we can remove the entire content of the file, because the configuration that we do want to use is stored in the director. And we also want to empty the services configuration. And after that is done, we will reload the Icinga2 daemon. Now when we switch back to the web interface, all that remains are the hosts and services that we configured via the director, and the default objects are gone. When we configured the hosts and the services in the director, you already saw a lot of different plugins that were available via the dropdowns. When we go back to our quick start guide and scroll down to the installed packages, you can see there is also a package called monitoring plugins included here. Those monitoring plugins are the source of the checks that you can see in the dropdowns. We recommend the monitoring plugins in the default installation because they're a great place to start for whatever you want to monitor. If you have any more specific needs, there is a large community that writes plugins for all sorts of different applications. And for those community-written plugins, we have the Icinga Exchange that you can find under exchange.icinga.com. And here on the Icinga Exchange, you can search for whatever you need. So if I type in plugins, we can see the plugins category. So if we search here, you can see all sorts of plugins that are written by members of the community or partners of Icinga. And let's say you are using an SMS Eagle device as your SMS gateway. We can also search for that here. And the first result is a plugin written by Netways, which is one of the Icinga partners. So let's click on that. And you can see some metadata on the left side and a description on the right side. And this description contains things like how to install it, how to use it with some examples. And most of the plugins that you can find here have a similar structure. And here on the left side, we can also see the source, which is usually a GitHub link to the project itself, so you can check it out in more detail. Alright, I hope you found some good resources and you can now configure your director as you want it. And if you ever write any plugins yourself, feel free to share them on the Icinga Exchange as well. There's a good chance another user is looking for exactly what you've written. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.